Welcome to my channel, The Good Book Tales. In today's video, we step into a story that is as old as time, yet as relevant as ever. A story about envy, pride, and the dangerous path they can lead us down. Have you ever seen someone rise to a position of honor and wondered, why not me? Maybe you've even felt that burning sting of jealousy when someone else's voice was heard while yours was ignored. If you have, then the story you're about to hear might feel uncomfortably close to home. It's the Bible story of Korah, a man whose envy would cost him everything. And when I say everything, I mean far more than he ever imagined losing. Picture this. The children of Israel are on a long, difficult journey through the wilderness. Food is scarce, the days are hot, the nights are cold, and the future feels uncertain. But through it all, one thing is clear. God has chosen Moses and Aaron to lead. These two brothers have been given authority, not because they claimed it for themselves, but because God placed it in their hands. For most people, this was enough. They accepted it, followed it, and trusted it. But not everyone was satisfied. Among the people was a man named Korah. He wasn't just anyone. He was from the tribe of Levi, a people already chosen for special service in the tabernacle. He had honor. He had responsibility. He had a role that mattered. But in his heart, envy began to grow. He looked at Moses and Aaron and thought, why should they have more? Why should they be above me? It wasn't enough for Korah to serve faithfully where he was placed. His heart wanted more. And that desire would soon ignite a rebellion that shook the nation. Korah didn't keep his envy hidden. He found others who felt the same way. Men of influence, men who were respected, men who could stir the crowd. Together, they began to whisper in the camp, planting seeds of doubt. Who made Moses the leader? Aren't we all holy? Don't we all have the right to lead? Why should he be the only voice? Slowly, suspicion spread, and rebellion began to rise. Imagine the tension in the camp as these questions echoed from tent to tent. Families talked late into the night, wondering who was right. Was Moses truly chosen by God, or was he just taking power for himself? Was Korah exposing a truth everyone else was too afraid to say? The lines were being drawn, and the people were about to witness something they would never forget. But here is where the story takes its most dangerous turn. Korah was not just questioning a man. He was standing against God's choice. And when you set yourself against God, the ground beneath your feet is never as steady as you think. So, what happened next? What became of Korah and his followers? The answer is both shocking and unforgettable. Stay with me, because as this animated Bible story of Korah unfolds, you will see exactly how envy can cost you everything. As the dust of doubt settled over the camp, the people of Israel found themselves caught between two voices. On one side was Moses, the man who had led them out of slavery in Egypt, the one who had stood before Pharaoh and declared God's command to let my people go. They had seen him stretch out his staff and part the Red Sea. They had seen him climb Mount Sinai and return with the 10 Commandments written on tablets of stone. His leadership wasn't built on his own strength, but on the clear power and calling of God. And yet, on the other side stood Korah, a man who was persuasive, confident, and willing to challenge the order that had been established. He didn't come across as a stranger or an outsider. He was one of them, part of the same people, sharing in the same struggles. That made his words even more dangerous. To many, Korah's argument sounded reasonable. After all, hadn't God said that the entire nation of Israel was chosen to be holy? Weren't all the tribes important? If that was true, then why should Moses and Aaron hold so much authority? Korah's challenge wasn't shouted in anger at first. It came as a question, a suggestion that seemed to give voice to what some were already quietly thinking. And in that moment of uncertainty, envy found fertile soil. The whispers turned into conversations, and the conversations turned into gatherings. Men of standing, 250 in number, joined Korah. These weren't ordinary people with no influence. They were leaders in the community, men respected by their peers. Together, they formed a powerful group, a rebellion brewing in the heart of the camp. With every word they spoke, the cracks of division grew wider. Suspicion of Moses and Aaron deepened, and many began to wonder if the leadership of Israel was about to change hands. But there was something Korah and his followers overlooked. Leadership in God's plan was never about human ambition or popularity. It wasn't about who shouted the loudest or gathered the most followers. It was about God's choice, God's will, and God's authority. By challenging Moses and Aaron, Korah was stepping into dangerous ground, even if he didn't fully realize it. Still, the people didn't see it that way. To them, Korah looked bold, courageous, even just. The more he spoke, the more the camp buzzed with anticipation. Would Moses defend himself? Would Aaron step down? Or would the people finally rise and declare a new order under Korah's leadership? The tension grew thicker each day, as if the very air was waiting for something to happen. And in the middle of it all, Moses knew the confrontation could no longer be avoided. The stage was set for a moment that would decide not only who would lead, but who was truly standing with God. The standoff grew heavier with each passing moment, and the people could feel the weight of the conflict pressing on them. Some in the camp looked at Korah and his men and saw strength in numbers. They thought, perhaps this is the change we need. A new kind of leadership that speaks for everyone. Others glanced toward Moses and Aaron, remembering the miracles they had witnessed. The plagues in Egypt, the Red Sea parting, the manna that fell from heaven. Could all of that really be forgotten so quickly? Families found themselves divided. Brothers argued with brothers. Neighbors eyed one another with suspicion. And trust within the camp began to crumble. The rebellion wasn't just about Korah's ambition anymore. It had planted seeds of doubt in the hearts of ordinary people. Some began to wonder if following Moses meant endless wandering in the wilderness. They whispered questions like, "What if Korah can take us somewhere better?" Fear mingled with frustration, and frustration turned into unrest. The conflict now had layers. It wasn't only between Korah and Moses, but between faith and doubt, obedience and pride, patience and impatience. Moses, though accused, carried himself differently. He wasn't shouting or rallying people to his side. Instead, he waited, knowing this battle wasn't his to win through persuasion or power. But even as he waited, his heart must have ached. These were his people, the very ones he had risked everything to lead, now ready to turn against him. And all the while, Korah's confidence grew. To his followers, he looked like a man on the brink of victory, bold enough to stand against giants like Moses and Aaron. The stage was set, but no one in the camp could imagine how high the cost of envy was about to become. The day of decision finally arrived, and the entire camp gathered in restless silence. No one wanted to miss what was about to unfold. The sun hung high, casting sharp shadows across the desert floor as Korah and his 250 men stood proudly together, holding their censers for the test that Moses had announced. The challenge was simple in words, but heavy in meaning. Each man would present incense before the Lord, and God himself would show who was truly chosen. It was no longer about opinions or arguments. This was about divine proof. The atmosphere was charged with tension. Every glance, every whisper carried the weight of uncertainty. Parents clutched their children close. Elders leaned on their staffs, and young men stared with wide eyes, caught between awe and fear. Would God honor Moses and Aaron? Or would Korah rise as the new leader of Israel? The camp trembled with anticipation, hearts beating like drums in the stillness of the desert. Moses spoke with a voice that cut through the silence. declaring that if these men were right, nothing unusual would happen. But if the Lord had truly chosen him and Aaron, then something extraordinary would take place, something that had never been seen before. His words left the people unsettled, a chill running through the crowd. This was no longer a debate of human voices. This was about to become a revelation of divine will. Korah stood firm, his followers behind him, confident that victory was near. To many watching, he seemed unshaken, fearless, almost triumphant. Yet in the hearts of others, dread was rising. The ground itself felt tense beneath their feet, as though creation was waiting for the signal. The climax was moments away, and no one could guess what was about to come. Just when it seemed the camp was waiting for a single, clear answer, another wave of conflict rose, shaking the people even more. The tension between Moses and Korah was already unbearable, but now the unrest began spreading beyond the leaders. Some of the tribes started murmuring that if Moses failed this test, they would follow Korah immediately, while others swore they would never abandon Moses, no matter the cost. What began as one rebellion was turning into the possibility of an all-out division among the people. Families braced themselves, unsure if the nation of Israel would even remain united by the end of the day. Moses, knowing how dangerous the moment had become, fell face down once again, before God, in front of everyone. This act stunned the crowd. He wasn't defending himself with anger or pride. Instead, he humbled himself, showing that he depended completely on God's will. But this very act of humility added fuel to the fire for Korah's followers. To them, it looked like weakness, a sign that Moses was about to lose. Some even laughed quietly, whispering that the time of Aaron's priesthood was ending. The rebellion no longer seemed like just a challenge. It was beginning to feel like a shift of power, a change of destiny for the people. Then came a shocking command from Moses that no one expected. He called on the assembly to step away from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, warning that judgment was close. His words startled the crowd. Could something so serious really be about to happen? People began pulling back, hesitant but afraid to ignore Moses' voice. The sight of entire families standing near their tents, still clinging to Korah's cause, filled the air with a dread that no one could shake. The stakes had suddenly grown higher than anyone imagined. This wasn't just about leaders fighting for power. Now it was about households, children, and futures. Would those standing with Korah share in his fate? Would the rest of Israel be forced to choose a side before it was too late? The camp was no longer a place of safety. It had become a battlefield of belief, with every heart trembling at the unknown that was about to break loose. The people waited, torn between fear and curiosity, as the moment of decision drew even closer. The camp stood frozen, the air heavy with dread as the people pulled back from Korah, Dathan, and Abiram's tents. Families clutched one another, eyes darting from Moses to the rebels who stood defiantly, certain they were in the right. Then, in a moment that would never be forgotten, the ground began to tremble. A low rumble echoed beneath their feet, growing louder, stronger, as though the earth itself had been stirred awake. Shouts filled the air as men, women, and children stumbled in fear. And then, with a roar that shook the wilderness, the earth split wide open. Before the people could react, the very ground swallowed Korah, Dathan, Abiram, and all those who had chosen to stand beside them. Their tents, their possessions, even their families disappeared in an instant as the earth closed back over them. Gasps and cries rose from the camp, terror etched on every face. The rebellion that had threatened to tear Israel apart was silenced in a single shocking act of judgment. The message was clear. This was not about Moses or Aaron lifting themselves above the people. This was about God's choice, and his authority was beyond question. But just as the people began to draw back in fear, a second, unexpected twist struck. fire came out from the presence of the Lord, and consumed the 250 men who had offered incense with Korah. Their censers, once meant to symbolize honor, now lay scattered in ashes, a lasting reminder of envy's cost. What had started as a challenge for equality had ended in a devastation no one could have imagined. And yet, the story didn't end there. The next day, murmurs rose again among the people. Instead of bowing in humility, many accused Moses and Aaron of causing the deaths. The rebellion had been crushed, but the spirit of discontent still lingered in the camp. It was as if envy had left behind a shadow that continued to spread. The climax had come with the ground swallowing Korah, but the true challenge of faith and obedience for Israel was only beginning. What would they choose now? Fear, rebellion, or trust in the God who had made his will so clear? The camp was shaken, not only by what they had seen with their eyes, but also by what it meant for their hearts. The ground had swallowed Korah and his followers. Fire had consumed the 250 men, and yet the people still struggled to understand the deeper lesson. They had witnessed power beyond imagination, but even more, they had seen how envy could blind a person to truth. Korah had been given honor, but he wanted more. His jealousy of Moses and Aaron led him down a path that ended in destruction, not only for himself, but for all who chose to stand with him. In the days that followed, God gave clear instructions for Aaron's priesthood to be confirmed. A staff was placed for each tribe before the Lord, and only Aaron's staff miraculously budded with blossoms and almonds. It was a sign to silence the arguments, a symbol that the priesthood was not chosen by men, but by God himself. This final act brought a sense of closure to the conflict, showing once more that leadership in Israel was never about personal ambition, but about obedience to God's will. For the people, the memory of Korah's rebellion became a warning carried through generations. Parents would tell their children of the day the earth opened, reminding them that pride and envy lead only to loss. The camp slowly returned to its routines, but with a renewed awareness of how serious it was to challenge God's authority. Moses and Aaron continued to lead, not with pride, but with humility, carrying the heavy responsibility of guiding a nation that often struggled with faith. The story of Korah stands as a powerful lesson even today. It shows how envy can cost you everything, how discontent can spread like fire, and how important it is to trust the places where God has put us. The Bible story of Korah is not just history. It is a mirror for our own hearts, a reminder that chasing power and position can blind us to the blessings already in our hands. In the end, the people of Israel learned that true safety is found not in rebellion, but in trusting the God who leads faithfully, even through the wilderness. And that is a truth worth remembering,